And we are live. Mayor Jim, please.
Thank you, Stacy. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of council, March 29th, 2021. You have before you a copy of tonight's agenda. I'll call the meeting to order, and we do have an addition. It would be under 8G, excused absence for Councillor Grunewagen. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Dufert, seconded by Councillor Chambers. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Any declarations of interest? Okay, none being noted. We'll move on to item number 4, announcements, awards, ceremonies, and presentations. Anything from council? Nothing noted. SAO Smith.
Nothing from administration, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 5A. Regular meeting of council minutes dated March 15th, 2021. Looking for a motion to adopt. Councillor Dufert. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of council dated March 15th, 2021 as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dowie. Any questions to the minutes? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 5B, special meeting of council minutes dated March 22nd, 2021. Looking for a motion. Go ahead, Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that the Council of the Town of Hay River adopts the minutes from the special meeting of council held on March 22nd, 2021 as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dufert. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item number 6 for information. 6A, Recreation Committee minutes for February 16th, 2021. Looking for a motion? I guess I don't need a motion. Or just to accept them for information purposes. I don't need the
Information only.
Okay.
No motion needed.
Thank you. Okay. So do we have any questions in regards to either one of the rec committee meeting minutes? No comments? Okay, we'll move on to item number 7, administrative inquiries. SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, Council. We'll start our update with the Director of Finance and Administration, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start with a brief reminder that business license renewal for 2021-22. The deadline for that is this Wednesday. SAO Smith and myself met with the Finance Committee on Friday, where we discussed the implementation of the 12.5% increase to utility rates for 2021. That information will be brought forward to Council not too distant future, sometime in April. We're also looking forward to bring in recommended increases rather for the next 3 years as part of that as well. We also discussed 2021-22 water and sewer funding grants, which we will receive from MACA. So those are on the agenda for this evening. That concludes my updates. Thank you.
Any questions for our Director of Finance? None being noted. Back to you, SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. The Director of Protective Services, please.
Thank you, Worship, and good evening, everyone. Just got a small update on what's going on with the breakup activities. As everybody's aware, we're kind of concerned about what may happen this year. So there's an awful lot of effort that's already gone into getting prepared for what's going to be happening. As far as mitigation is concerned, we've got Stantec doing some work for us in Vail Island to do some survey work and to tell us what we need to do for some berming that may happen on the in the West Channel. As far as the preparedness goes, we had our first local EMO meeting today. I think it went fairly well. We were able to inform all the players as to what's been going on, how much we've accomplished so far, and what we are looking for in the future. We've developed and executed a communications plan. SAO Smith has done a great job getting some communications out there, both on cabin radio, CBC North, a little bit in the social media and that type of thing. So that's a real good start to our communications plan. I've tested out our email systems and also tested out our phone systems, and everything seems to be working on that particular aspect. Already talked to CN Rail in regard to the rail cars. They will be storing their rail cars on their property on the outside of town by the junction there during any breakup activities. So we'll keep them informed as to when we need to have them moved and that type of thing, but they're more than happy to help us out. Our monitoring crews in place. I have approximately 15 people that are going to be doing monitoring for us this year. The greatest proportion of them are all trained, have been doing it for years. So we should be able to get a good flow of information coming in from those people. We have cleared access to the Point Bridge, so I can install the kit on there hopefully this week. We've dropped in a power point at the Pine Point Bridge. We've also dropped one off at the Highway West Channel Bridge, so that we can move our equipment in and out a little bit easier. Otherwise, we had some issues getting onto the railroad tracks and stuff. So the access to our equipment is going to be an awful lot better than it has been in the past. I'll be out tomorrow at the falls, double checking the equipment out there, getting our data logger installed, and making sure all our batteries and that type of thing are up to snuff. And we'll also get the preliminary setup done on Paradise Valley. During our meeting today, we were able to pass on some of the things that we need done by the different organizations. Infrastructure has been asked to take care of the highway delineators, to have equipment available for us for clearing roads in the port landing area and in the docking area and that type of thing. And that sounds like that'll be underway. We have our ice thickness testing set up to be accomplished somewhere between April 9th and 16th. And the reason for those particular dates is so that our data follows through from year to year. Otherwise, if you're not comparing apples to apples, it can get a little bit confusing as to what's going on with the ice. Flood response and recovery crew training and that type of thing is well underway. Coast Guard auxiliaries already been asked to help us in case we need water rescue. Fire department personnel are fairly well adverse to doing evacuations and that type of thing already. Evacuation center setup is well underway. The rec directors submitted some documentation to both MACA and to the Chief Public Health Officer, and we're waiting for final approval on that. I would suggest that there's going to be some, they'll need a little bit of time for them to go through it and make sure that the COVID stuff has all been properly taken care of. Deputy Mayor Bouchard will be taking care of our RV camp accommodations again this year. So we expect to see that starting to roll out towards the middle of April. As far as the handling of pets and that type of thing is concerned, the animal shelter has been contacted and they will be playing ball with us again this year as well. And finally, as far as transportation is concerned, Deputy Mayor Bouchard is working on that. We'll be looking at some private transportation, and the fire department will be taking care of anybody that has any mobility issues. And that concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you, Director. Do we have any questions for our Director of Protective Services? Councillor Dewey, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I don't know if this question would be best for the director or the SAO, but along the vein of potential issue there in the Old Town, Vale Island. Just wondering the conversations that we're having or have been having with the chief public health officer in terms of, obviously we're in a bit of a different situation this year than we were last year. Basically last year we were full in isolation and didn't really know where we were going with COVID and what that looked like. I think obviously we're in a little better spot this time around. So I'm just wondering if some of those questions have been asked or requests made on how we'll go about an evacuation and where people can stay, and if we're going to have to be evacuating to Yellowknife again or things along that nature.
SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. That's certainly a very pertinent question at this time. As the Director of Protective Services mentioned, we've done some work there, and actually the Director of Recreation has done a good job of, as usual, putting together information to support what our evacuation registration center we think would look like under a evacuation scenario. So at this point, we're hoping or intending that we would be using the evacuation center to house a certain number of residents. And we also are hoping, as per normal allowances right now, that family and friends would be an option for people that are moving off the island. So we've included some of that in our communication already, just saying it's good for residents of the Vale Island to be having those conversations with other people, both for family and pets. That said, the Office of the Chief Public Health Officer and the GNWT is working on, we understand, evacuation guidelines that will be used throughout the Northwest Territories. They consider the current and the potential changes, I guess, with the COVID scenario. So we are still waiting on that document. We were hopeful to get it into our hands last week for review. But we have had some communication back and forth with them. So it's sounding like they are going to support the use of community centers or community evacuation centers for accommodations and food accommodations. So some questions still on showers and washrooms and how those, what procedures will be used with those. There is still some questions that we have, and again, we'll be waiting for that guidelines document to come out hopefully this week, along the lines of what happens if we change from a situation where there is, say, community spread or trace detection within the sewer system. So we also recognize that there'll be scenarios where people will be in isolation at their homes and not likely to be to use the to use our evacuation center or stay with family and friends. So there's assumption there, but we do need to work out the specifics on that they would stay in an isolation center. And of course, there could be people that are staying who also have COVID. So there is a lot of different scenarios and things to be worked out here. But as it stands, if things were to stay as they are, as we are in phase 2 of the Emerging Wisely document, it is sounding like there's going to be allowances for staying with family and friends and at the evacuation centers where it's applicable, I guess. We have presented scenarios as well. This year, we're trying to work on multiple scenarios, sort of a thought typical case, which actually includes an evacuation up to a level of more severe flooding on Vale Island, which could have a longer term impact for some household members. So as an example, some of our plan would see the use of the evacuation center for 3 to 5 days. But what happens if there are damages to homes and people need to accommodate elsewhere for an extended period, such as, say, multiple weeks until those houses are habitable. So working with the MACA on that, and that gets into more of the territorial EMO groups for support. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going in circles yet, but certainly a lot going on there. And we hope to have more clearance and guidance by the end of this week. But we're well prepared, especially coming out of last year and the challenges associated with accommodating, feeding, transporting, both within the community here and for plans in case we had to evacuate into other communities. So yeah, we're in good shape, but there's still more information to come to really solidify the procedures.
Thank you. Any further questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Dufert.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not a question. I just wanted to just commend Chief Potter and our SAO Smith and everybody else who's been working on this. It sounds like they're doing a great job again. I know there's been a lot of people a little bit concerned about the extra high levels of water this year, and it's very comforting to know that the team is really on the ball and getting things done. Good job.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Go ahead, Councillor Dewey.
Your Worship, yeah, I just want to echo that. I I asked a question because, you know, I lived on Vail Island last year with our evacuation there, and I know you know, with COVID, it sort of created a bunch of new hoops that we had to jump through and that administration had to look after. But you know, just thinking about it here lately, because it's been on everybody's mind, it's, I think, probably a lot more complex even this year, given that there are so many other variables, high water and you know, the COVID evolving COVID situation. So I just want to commend administration on working on that. Thank you.
Yes, I as well. Any further questions from council? None noted. Back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll go next to the Director of Recreation, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, everyone. I think I can follow up on the flood evacuation and COVID discussions there and confirming that submitted a plan or an application to vary from public health order requirements to the OCPHO last week. Initial discussions with environmental health representatives were that it seems like the guidelines we have in place, currently have in place, and some of the changes that we're requesting seem to align with the GNWT's vision, with evolving COVID realities. I think SAO Smith brought a good point where if the risk level was to increase, or if there were to be traces of COVID, then those are separate questions to be answered. The evacuation center plan, as of right now, in my opinion, seems sound, and we have appropriate guidelines and appropriate procedures in place. I think we learned a lot last year, and that was a difficult situation in the sense that there were little to no COVID guidelines at that point because it was so new. Now there are a lot of guidelines and a lot of procedures that we have in place that we can apply to an evacuation if needed. And I think that the application we've submitted can serve as our initial plan in preparing and communicating how we can support residents if they do need to evacuate. So I did spend quite a bit of time working on that last week. Other items I was working on the administrative side was that we had to meet some March 31st spending deadlines on 3 of our bigger funding contribution agreements. So we've confirmed that we've met spending requirements for our CanNor Year 1 funding, which is for the enhancement of our tourism opportunities and marketing within the town. We've purchased $55,000 worth of conferencing equipment for the community center, and purchased $20,000 worth of equipment and materials for the upgrading of Port Landing docking. For the most part, it's docking, but we've also purchased lighting and cameras so that we can have better surveillance at Port Landing and make it a more secure place for, especially for our seasonal slip users. We've confirmed spend and we'll be reporting on some marketing initiatives that our tourism and economic development coordinator has been working on, and those will continue in year 2 and year 3 of that funding agreement. We've also met our spending requirements with regards to our MACA Youth and Sport funding, which was $61,000 this year. It was increased with some federal money for COVID relief. We're spending that money on increasing and diversifying the fitness equipment in the multipurpose room. So some of that equipment has arrived, and the rest of the equipment should be arriving fairly soon. Lastly, we've also spent $33,000 on equipment for youth and after-school programming. That was as part of a partnership between the United Way and the GNWT to support our youth programs, which have increased quite a bit this year. And we're trying to set ourselves up so that we can continue that programming and have little to no cost in the next few years on the capital side. On the administrative side, that's mostly what I've been working on. We're also preparing for the shoulder and summer seasons in looking at our schedules for April, May, and June, where we'll be moving the ice surfaces to more of a multi-sport drop-in programming with some nights that'll have specific sports available, but other sports also that'll be available, such as the pickleball. People will be able to schedule times to play pickleball and pay their drop-in fees and go there, play their pickleball matches there. We also have the equipment that we had purchased in 2019, which is some basketball nets, badminton nets. We have the hockey nets out there at all times, and we've actually recently acquired some indoor soccer nets. So that'll be an addition to this year's. We'll be offering indoor soccer drop-in for different age groups, kind of like we do with our shinny hockey times during the winter season. Our rec programmer is also starting to prepare initial plans for summer heat and some of the other summer programming, which includes some of our special events that we have throughout the summer. So we're looking ahead to try to prepare for that. And with that brings the need to discuss hiring of summer students. We've confirmed the return of 4 of our summer students from last year, and we've received some resumes. We're reviewing those, and we'll be confirming hires and whatnot once we can discuss with budgeting and confirmed funding in the next few weeks. On the human resources side, we also have the recreation programmer position, which has been advertised. Nicole Mitchell has moved on to or been promoted to the recreation programming supervisor position. So we've advertised the programmer job, and we've also advertised the customer service clerk full-time position, and those will be open until April 12th. We've received some resumes to this point, and I expect that we'll have some strong candidates for those positions. Other than that, I can confirm that we're in the last week of the ice season. User groups are still using the ice surface this week. We've got reduced hours over the weekend with Good Friday, Easter Sunday, and Easter Monday. And we do have some public programming to try to get people on the ice for their last opportunities before we take the ice out next week. Curling Club volunteers are also taking out that ice. I believe they'll be starting this weekend. And like I said, we'll be transitioning towards shoulder and summer seasons beginning next week. I think those are all my updates for this week. Oh, I guess the only other thing to say on shoulder and summer seasons is we will be advertising renewal process and timelines for Port Landing seasonal slips. It's always around this time of year that we advertise those. So people who had slips in previous years will have the opportunity to renew those, and we'll be taking applications for people who didn't have slips and are interested in acquiring those. The good thing is that we have increased our docking, and I think we'll be able to increase our slips by 5 to 8 new seasonal slips this year. We did have some people on the waiting list last year, so it's a good sign that we'll be able to accommodate if there are people on the waiting list this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for our Director of Recreation? None being noted, back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Director of Public Works and Services, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. On the public works side of things, this last week, our guys have been working at doing some snow clearing, trading on just clearing out the stockpiles and some of the crescents around town and those areas. There may be some more snow clearing going on later this week, somewhat dependent on our weather. The current forecast is calling for rain on Wednesday and Thursday, so we'll see which shape that leaves our roads in before making any decisions on it. Other than that, been working on the Fraser Place items that are on the go. So we're getting quotes for some of the tree removal in there that we want to do ahead of in the month of April anyways. And our consultant is working on the detailed design. We should have that sometime this week, and then look to go out for tender on that project shortly after that. Did receive the inspection report for our water intake inspection. Have passed that along to SAO Smith, and him and I will review it. There's also about probably a couple hours worth of video footage that they've passed along too, with commentary on what they're seeing in the intake inspection, as well as in our the two reservoirs that they did inspect and clean. So a lot to go through in the video side of things with that, but we do have all the information from that, which is good. Closing this week is our RFP for the zoning bylaw review. So that closes this week, as does the tender for the Beaver and Riverview water and sewer and road project for this summer. Also looking at getting out, hopefully in early April here, an RFP with regards to the tires at the landfill, and looking to do something with them finally. So that should be moving forward sometime here early in April. And those are my updates for this week.
Thank you, Director. Any questions from council? None being noted, back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have much more to add. It has been a busy week, you can tell from our updates. Lots of involvement, including the Director of Public Works and Services on our breakup planning, preparedness, mitigation work. So it's really a team effort there. And actually, Deputy Mayor Bouchard is also on our planning team as well. So thanks to everyone who's contributing there. I have some communication here. We're trying to get our solid waste management bylaws and some associated service contracts that we have in place renewed and into order this year. So reached out for some consulting support on that. We have a disposal bylaw as well as our tipping rates bylaw, and contracts for landfill management and waste disposal as well. So that's all being sort of packaged together and in a proper order of operations to get completed over the summer. And our fees and charges bylaw as well. We've been putting a lot of work into that one to consolidate many bylaws, many schedules or from different bylaws and their rates into the one bylaw. And there's a lot of work that's needed to actually repeal and amend the associated bylaws. So expect to have that, as I've been saying, I think now for a while, into committee and council's hands in April. There's a fair amount of public reaction, as you would have noticed on Facebook and flowing into our offices and elsewhere last week on the stop sign that was erected at the highway railroad crossing. So the town was not aware of that occurring. So we were reacting to the public comment and reaction to it as well. So it was CN that erected it. And since then we've had some conversation with them, reached out to them just to discuss it, make them aware of our permitting process for traffic signage, and let them know that we would certainly value any information and reasons for why it's being installed, and if there's any other options that should be considered. So waiting to hear back on that, but we understand that it did pertain to not only line of sight in the area, but also the many egress and roads that are in that area. They're now looking to make that spur more active. So they're following Transport Canada guidelines, and we are aware that they are looking at other intersections in town and some stop sign work this year as well, some other maintenance work. So trying to get some more communication so that we can work with each other to support the safety of the community. One last item, hopefully in April, we just have the 2 council meetings in April, but if not April, into early May, I do want to bring forward an update to council on our strategic plan. Just a progress update there. We've focused extensively on our high priority items that are within that plan, and we've made some good progress on that to date. So you'll get a more formal update on that specific plan then. And that concludes our administrative update.
Thank you, SAO. Any questions? None being noted. So moving on to item number 8A, 2021 Land Incentive Program. Stacy, can I get you to move to page 41? There we go. Okay, looking for a motion? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Moved by myself. The town of Haver extends the land sales incentive program through the year 2021.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dowie. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 8B is a letter of support for Hay River Committee for Persons with Disabilities. I'm looking for a motion. Go ahead, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River directs administration to draft a letter supporting the Hay River Committee for Persons with Disabilities for their application to access $25,000 from the FCC Agri-Spirit Fund.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dufert. Any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I see we have a couple of these letter supports, and I understand the causes are probably valid there, and obviously they go to good things in the community. I'm just wondering some of the political fallout if we support one versus somebody else that's applying against them, and some of that didn't come to the community. I'm not sure if this is a requirement for some of this funding, but is it typical? Like, is there any vetting going on that we're assessing whether the town needs to put a letter of support, or is it basically because they feel that the application will have more merit if it comes from the community here? So not so much this one, but the next one is like, I just want to say, is there political, we're supporting somebody's project versus maybe somebody's project that's affecting the community more, but yeah.
SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I'll try my best to answer that. I think there's so many different circumstances and types of funding applications that come out. It's quite common for applications to require letters of support. Our primary vetting is we consider if the town of Hay River is also applying for that application. In that case, we would not offer letters of support. We have offered multiple letters of support for people applying to the same program. So let's say there was two nonprofit organizations applying for one fund, we would we've offered both of them letters of support. So I guess there is maybe, that should be considered as well as in that if we receive a letter and we feel that it's something that the community can benefit from, we wouldn't determine which one was more favorable. We do run into some challenges as well, where I think even in some applications, we might find that the nonprofit group might actually be having a stronger case than the town. But as it stands, we haven't been supporting those that we plan to apply on. In some cases, there's applications that require the municipality to actually be to hold the funds or hold to the application in dollars, and they enter into an agreement, as an example, with the NGO. So I could see where those can get a bit complicated as well in terms of not knowing about other applicants that may have applied and entering into an actual partnership arrangement. So haven't seen any of those myself yet, but I do feel in general we're asking some questions, and if we feel that it's a valid application, we do offer the support letter and wish them luck.
Thank you. Anything further from council? Do I have a mover and seconder on that? I do, don't I? Okay, all in favor? Thank you, motion carries. Item number 8C, letter of support for Fort Simpson Métis Nation. Looking for a motion? Councillor Chambers, go ahead.
I'll move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River directs administration to draft a letter supporting the Fort Simpson Métis Nation project proposal for the Northern Food Innovation Challenge.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dufert. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Oh, never mind. Sorry. Councillor Dowie, go ahead.
Sorry, thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I guess maybe to expand on what the Deputy Mayor's question was for the last one, I just want to confirm that, to our knowledge, this isn't competing with, our local group. That's all.
Okay, SAO Smith, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I think it is. I mean, this one starts to stretch on an area that, I think more scrutiny is needed when you are supporting initiatives that are outside of the community or access to funding. We did have a bit of discussion, myself and Mayor Jameson, on this one, to determine if it's something that are we accepting too much risk that there might be another organization. So we're not another organization within the community. So we weren't aware of anyone that's accessing it. And sometimes these applications, it is a competitive process, but not to say multiple organizations in different communities wouldn't receive the benefit. But in this one here, again, without an awareness of another organization in town applying for it, and a thought that there would be a benefit to into our community and the territory as a whole, we put it in front of council for their decision.
Consideration. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, and again, it's not specifically to the topic, and obviously food security is an issue in the Northern Territories. We just went through COVID and seen some of that question and stuff like that. It's just, is there a political grenade that we're stepping into after we make a motion, to support give a letter of support? Is, I don't know how you get around it, but it's just, they are difficult sometimes in should we be doing all these letters of support if they're not necessarily required, I guess. Thanks.
Okay, well, I guess my thoughts on that are, as Glenn alluded to, we did have a conversation on that. That's why it's here. We can either support or deny. Again, food security in the north became very evident when we were moving through this process last year, that it is a weak spot. We're at the end of that food chain. And as far as we know, there is nobody competing against this. This is an innovation challenge, is my understanding when I read through it. But yeah, that's why it's here, to either we will support it or we won't. I noticed Councillor Willows had his hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it would be nice to have a little more information on this one. I mean, in principle, I'm supportive. However, I don't know how this would impact the Hay River Métis Association, the Fort Resolution Métis Association. I don't know if they're going out for, the same kind of funding, perhaps for a different project. So I'm not sure where that leaves us, failing having that piece of information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dewey, you had a question?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I mean, basically for me, it's just knowing that we wouldn't be directly competing with something that the Hay River Métis would be applying on would be my concern. And other than that, like I support the project in principle. I want to make sure that we're not going against our own residents.
Fair enough. So our option is vote it down or table it. I would assume that if mind you, again, there's that word assume, the Métis Nation here needed a letter of support, they would have approached us or at least had the conversation. Anyways, how does council want to proceed?
Your Worship, can I just add to this?
You sure can. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Sorry, I'm not on Zoom. Technical difficulties. I think I agree with our councillors that I think we should hold off and wait for more information and just check with the local Métis here. While it's GNWT driven, it's outside our boundaries with respect to Hay River. So I would table it for. I would suggest we table it for more, for more in-depth study, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Go ahead, S.A.O. Smith.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to note that our understanding of the deadline for this is March 31st. So any tabling would push it beyond that. But perhaps we could add a condition to the recommendation, something along administration could put a bit of time making some calls. Obviously, we can contact the other Métis governments, South Slave. It's a little difficult to try to reach out to everyone who possibly could be applying, but we could add that if it helps.
Okay, so
yeah.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we don't actually approve it till our next meeting. So, or is this these are actual motions that are going to go forward?
Yes, this is a regular meeting, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah.
So who made the motion? Councillor Chambers, do you want to change that motion that we support, to draft a letter of support after ensuring that our local Métis are not competing?
Sure.
That's fair enough. Everybody's in. So seconded by Councillor Duffer. You're good with that? Okay. So I'm looking for a motion, or I'm looking for approval. All in favor as amended? Thank you. Motion carries.
Agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Okay, item 8D, report to council for bylaw 2425 taxi bylaw. Looking for a motion. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I move that the Council of Town of Hay River accepts the report on bylaw number 2425 taxi license as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dowie. Any questions to the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Willows.
Thank you. I don't have the full bylaw in front of me. I've got the motion in front of me. Is this the one where we're talking about changing hours of operation?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, I have a little bit of concern here in that, at least from what I can read, we're basing that on the last year's experience where we've been in COVID. And I recognize that obviously it's difficult to hire. It's, the people wanting cabs has diminished considerably over the last year. My only concern is we're looking to change a bylaw by addressing customer service concerns. What we're basically doing is agreeing to lower the amount of customer service and hours and availability of taxis. Those two things don't seem to line up to me. And I'm just wondering if it's, prudent to be changing the bylaw when we're still in the middle of a pandemic. So that's my question and concern. Thank you.
Thank you. So SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I can start, and this has gone through the policy committee as well. There might be other members to add to it, but I guess I'll just start with the hours of service, because it does seem counterintuitive in terms of I think what we've been seeing with this council and maybe even prior to, it's been a long-standing issue where there's been concerns with service levels, both with there's a wide range of issues I should maybe first mention, but pertaining to service levels, it does. There are quite a few complaints that have been received around and are in the public media around dispatchers not answering the phone calls or waiting a long time to receive a taxi. So that was at the heart of it. In conversations and meetings with the two licensed operators in town, we did have several meetings, and they did submit a letter as well that's attached to this report. They did highlight a lot of the challenges over the years. I think one of them actually that maybe not included in the report is also, it is the sparse geography of the community and really the response times and servicing from, almost 40 kilometers really within our own boundaries plus KFN. Difficulty really just in recruitment in general, harassment of cab drivers, unsafe hours, unsafe conditions. It's been difficult for them to meet the requirements of what we currently require in our bylaw, which is a 24/7 service with a minimum of 2 taxis on all hours. So they've, provided indication that it's extremely difficult for them to continue to operate, especially with the COVID influences, but it has been over the past years as well, to maintain that level of service for those hours. So in working with them and in consulting with some other municipalities, we came up with a recommendation, not quite in alignment with what is being suggested by the taxi operators, and maybe somewhere in the middle of what's really been thought from a 24/7 to what's presented here, is that it sets hours that are meeting the primary demands, but when there's times, we're hearing that there's times where they might work for an entire Sunday and make $10 over 24 hours. We do feel like there is an opportunity there to be more realistic with what the hours of operation are, or the primary demand at least is, to keep these companies operating. And by that, the key part towards increasing the level of service is actually then focusing within those hours, so they've narrowed the scope of their business to become more manageable. The hopes is that through it, there would be communication to the public on those hours that they're operating, and people would recognize that they must make arrangements within those hours in order to get taxis. It's done in some other communities, smaller communities. So that's kind of the basis behind it. There's other changes in the bylaw that we've focused more on safety and some of the elements of administration that make more sense. But we know that there's infractions all over the place, and we think that this really presents something that is is more fair to the operator, gives them an opportunity to focus on those hours of service. They can go beyond those. Those are just the minimum levels. So if there is events or activities that they'd anticipate having a higher demand for, then they could do so. But it's a tough one. It's a really tough one. And we think that in order to enforce a bylaw that is 24/7 with 2 cabs, push comes to shove, we're probably going to lose our operators. So it's presented for consideration.
Thank you. Anything further from our chair?
Can I say something, Your Worship?
Go ahead, Steve. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, over the past years, we've seen cutbacks in retail hours and so forth, not just in our community, but, across the country. So, when we look at the taxi service and the level of taxi service, it probably doesn't make much sense to, have this 24/7 with 2 cabs on call, on duty, during that period. But what is the recommended in terms of hours of operation? What are the taxi services recommending or providing to our community moving forward? What is the recommendation from them in terms of their hours of operation? Is it from, what are the hours? If we can advise our public of that. Thank you.
SAO Smith, do you want to speak to the hours?
Sure. I just preface it with a note that the operators in the letter that is attached suggested slightly reduced hours, and I don't believe they defined the number of taxis that would be available during those hours. So during our own, considering that, but considering our own research into some demand, there is a schedule in the report, and it does change from time and day of the week. But for the first, starting on Sunday and statutory holidays, there would be a recommendation of 1 taxi between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. So outside of the hours presented there wouldn't be a taxi service unless the companies choose to do so. Again, this is minimum requirements. They did want to emphasize through the conversations that that booking taxis are always what they try to promote, even through their own advertising on their vehicles and such, is to make arrangements. If you know that you have a need, they would make accommodations, but of course that's outside of a specific bylaw. We then have from Monday through Thursday, from 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., which is intended to catch the current flights, the Yellowknife, and those demands at each side of the flights, to have 2 taxis. From 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., Monday through Thursday, there would be just 1 taxi. And this is per dispatch company. So we currently have 2 dispatch companies in town. And then on the weekends, between Friday and Saturday, 2 taxis between 6:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. 3 a.m. intending to cover the closure of bars and other establishments that are open usually till 2 a.m. Well, at the latest 2 a.m., I guess, at this point.
Thank you, SAO. Councillor Dewey, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, this conversation, around the level of service for the taxis is kind of an ongoing one, and I tend to agree with Councillor Willows when I first looked at this, and it's just for the emergency potential that you have, where someone, in those shoulder hours, I guess, where there wouldn't be a cab on, that there would be somebody to call if you needed to get to the hospital, where something wasn't as major as, say, you needed an ambulance. So I kind of worry, in a sense, that there is going to be the potential of increasing even more the pressure on the ambulance service. That said, administration has had a few conversations with our taxi providers, and I think it's somewhere in here is probably a more realistic approach, I guess, as the SAO was saying, to what we can expect a business to comply to. If we force a business to operate 24 hours a day and lose money, it won't be long before we don't have one, and then we're in a worse off situation than we would be without coverage for that couple hour period. So I think there's a balance in there somewhere right now, and to Councillor Willow's concern of, maybe we're doing this bylaw right now because of the way that COVID has impacted the industry and every industry. There's nothing saying that we can't go back and look at this a year down the road, or 2 years down the road, or 10 years down the road, and change it back to something that's more realistic with the situation that we're in at that time, I guess, it would be my only point.
Thank you, Councillor Dowie. Deputy Mayor Bouchard.
I think we had a few discussions in the committee about this, and it seems more realistic of what's actually happening there. And I don't have a problem with these hours, and they're probably the minimum hours they have to work, but and it is pushing what the providers have indicated to us. But the only concern that I would have is that we delay this a couple weeks. We're looking at passing the bylaw here just after this. So it's like, I would like to have that discussion out in the public to see what kind of feedback we're going to get from the public. I indicated we should have some of that discussion, that maybe 9A, which is coming up, is the actual bylaw itself. If we waited, I'm not sure if there's any time crunch, but just to see that public feedback on this hour regimen.
Yeah, this is only first and second. We still have a third reading, so there is time for public input. Did you still have a comment, Councillor Dowie? Okay, so looking for a motion. Do I have a motion? You guys talk so long, I lost my place. Do I have a motion? I do.
You have Deputy Mayor Bouchard and Councillor Dowie first and second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so looking for all in favor?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, item 8E, O&M funding agreement report. Looking for a motion. Come on, it's for money. Councillor Dufert, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just waiting for the screen to change.
Stacy's on it.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that the Council of the Town of Hay River approves the operation and maintenance contribution agreement for 2021-2022 in the amount of $2,215,000.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Willows. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 8F, Water and Sewer Contribution Agreement Report. Looking for a motion. Councillor Dufert, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that the Council of the Town of Hay River approves the water and sewer funding contribution agreement for 2021-22 in the amount of $1,089,000.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Willows. Any questions? All in favor? Perfect. Motion carries. Thank you. And item 8G, Councillor Dowie. Excused absence for Councillor Grunewagen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that the Council of the Town of Hay River excuses Councillor Grunewagen from the March 29th meeting of council.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Chambers. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item number 9A, bylaw 2425 taxi bylaw, first reading. Looking for a motion. Councillor Dowie, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I'll move bylaw number 2425 taxi bylaw.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Dufert. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Second reading, bylaw 2425 taxi bylaw. Councillor Dufert, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move second reading of bylaw 2425 taxi bylaw.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Willis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I just again want to say that it seems counterintuitive to me from a service point of view and the fact that we're in the midst of a pandemic. That being said, I recognize that we can revisit this, but I would certainly encourage the recommendation from the Deputy Mayor that we get some public feedback on this, because at the end of the day, it's the public who the taxi serves. So we still have another reading to go through, and hopefully we'll have some input from the public with regard to this bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess, do council want to give SAO direction to post this on Facebook, the bylaw? Does that make sense? Show of hands? Okay, yeah, so there's direction given, SAO Smith. And so all in favor of second reading bylaw 2425 taxi bylaw?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Item 9B, bylaw 1812 Fraser Place rezoning, third and final reading. Looking for a motion. Deputy Mayor Bouchard, seconded by Councillor Dowie. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I move the third and final reading of bylaw 1812, Fraser Place rezone.
Thank you. And that was seconded by Councillor Dowie. Any comments, questions? I'm going to just give a couple comments on this because I know that it's been a long time in coming and there has been some concerns over it. So how we got here, the town currently has no residential zone properties in inventory. There's very little housing available for sale on the private market. In addition to this, the town is positioned for economic growth with opportunities around the Pine Point Mine, Aurora Wood Pellets, fish processing plant, and the long-term care facility. Why Fraser Place? This area has been identified for over 15 years by councils. It is easily developed at a relatively low cost. It uses existing infrastructure, which I know I've had a lot of questions on why not Sundog. We've already cleared it, etc. Sundog would need a lift station. So the cost and the time, we'd be looking at another 4 or 5 years, and the cost is probably 3 or 4 times more than what it would cost us to develop Fraser Place. And it is located on good land, which reduces risks associated with developing land. So this is the first step to address short-term community housing needs. Through the community consultation phase and general feedback received to date, council and administration both feel that we have a design that preserves the majority of the habitat in the area and also preserves the existing and valued nature trail system. So we're excited to be moving forward on the Fraser Place development. And those are my comments. So anything from anyone else? Councillor Anderson, you're off mute. Did you have some comments?
Yes, we've had some good feedback, negative and positive, from our community members, and I think I would have definitely rather seen development across beside the hospital, Sundog, and so forth. That land is already cleared, but the issue with that is the cost of doing it in that area. And, you know, this, the plan for Fraser Place and the trails and so forth, you know, I think our town administration has done what we can do to make that area accessible for trails and so forth. And so the plan looks good to me, and we've had some good feedback from community members with regards to the plan, which is really encouraging. So again, like I say, we would rather seen development. I think we all would have rather seen development in Sundog and so forth, but obviously that's not doable at this time. So, but no, I think the plan looks good, and it's leaving some trails and so forth. And I just thank the community members for the comments and that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Councillor Willows, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm supporting this bylaw. You know, we appreciate having the input from the community for sure. We're not always going to be able to please everyone, but I think administration and council have gone a long way in hearing what the concerns are, and have gone a very long way in trying to address the concerns around the trails. And I think that they have developed a plan that is pleasing to the eye and still maintains the environment and the trails and the ability for people to recreate in that area. So I think it's a good compromise all the way around, and I think it's a good project for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Willows. Any further? Councillor Dewey, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just like to request this be a recorded vote. I think I know where it's going to land, but I'd just like to request that we record it.
Fair enough. Okay. Anything further from council? Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Councillor Anderson, so that is motion carries, and I did not have any opposed and no opposition. Okay, recorded, duly noted, Councillor Dewey. And moving on to item 9C, bylaw 2428, disposal of land bylaw. Looking for a motion. Slow on the draw tonight, guys. Does anybody want to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Dewey. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, I was looking for it on my phone. I see it's up on our screen here now. I'll move first reading of bylaw number 2426, LND-21.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dufert. Any questions to the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Dewey.
Thank you, Worship. Just had a question on how we plan on going about disposing, like actually disposing of these lots. If we're gonna just put them on the market for sale, if we're gonna have some sort of lottery type thing, or how we're gonna go about actually selling these.
I'll pass that question on to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. With the intent is to have a raffle, but I better confirm. We've had a bit of back and forth on this with the Director of Finance.
Thank you. Okay, so we will get back to you on that one.
No, sorry. If the Director of Finance wishes to answer.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
You're on mute if you are there, Sam.
Apologies, I missed the first part of that question.
Just a clarification, Sam, on the disposal method that's outlined for use for the Saskatoon Drive properties.
Our intention with those properties is to do a raffle type draw. Previously, those properties, council adjusted the price on those, I believe in 2016 was the last time they were looked at. And so when we reviewed the bylaw, we thought that it would be appropriate, just given that there has been several parties that have asked for whether the town had any land in inventory. we haven't had residential properties available for quite a while. Since those properties came back into inventory, we thought it wouldn't be appropriate just to put them up as a first come, first serve. We've had issues with that in the past. So that's the justification.
Thank you. Any further questions? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, so these are the properties that the NWT Housing Corporation has turned back to the town of Haver?
That's correct. That's what he was referring to. Was that your question, Councillor Dowie, or was it in regards to Fraser Place?
Nope. It was these ones I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anything further from council? All in favor? First reading? Motion carries. Motion for second reading? Go ahead, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move second reading of bylaw number 2426 LND-21
Thank you.
/21.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dufert. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, item number 10 is a motion to go in camera. I'm looking for a motion. Councillor Dufert, seconded by Councillor Chambers. Okay, and before we vote on that, I'm going to ask you all to swear. You can come off mute. I'll start with Deputy Mayor Bouchard. Do you solemnly swear and sincerely affirm that you are alone and cannot be overheard while in camera?
I swear.
Councillor Dufert?
Thank you, Your Worship, I swear.
Councillor Willows?
I swear.
Councillor Chambers?
I swear.
Councillor Anderson?
I swear.
Councillor Dowie?
Thank you, Your Worship. I swear.
Okay, so all in favor of going in camera? Thank you. And it is 7:41, so at 7:45, we will reconvene in camera. Thanks, guys.